You're tuned in to HorrorSlop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is HorrorSlop. And now the first descent. One story to open the night. Just enough to crack the door and let something in.
Forgive me if this isn't allowed here, but I just wanted to make this known, being that my good friend, Kyle, aka Big SP00K, was pretty prominent on this sub. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple days ago due to a terrible tragedy. I just want to say rest in power to my brother Kyle. Read his fucking stories. You won't regret it. Again, sorry if this isn't allowed here.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I became the old crazy witch on the block with a dead husband. The kids made up their stories. I mostly just sat on my front porch and enjoyed the sun when it came out. The heat made my sore joints feel better. My neighborhood is very close to a wooded park. On my days off from work at the grocery store, Greg and I used to walk down those quiet paths. But there was also a feral cat problem there. I'd catch only glimpses of their skinny bodies and wild eyes. He came to a stop in front of the porch and froze, staring at me. I stared back. His tail twitched. His amber eyes bore right into mine. "Here, kitty kitty." Goliath slowly stepped closer to the porch, stopping at the steps. When I got up and tried to get closer, Goliath darted away and ran into the bushes. He didn't trust me. But I was so lonely. Even big old mean cat like that could give me some sort of companionship. I went inside and got some canned tuna, opening it up and setting it at the steps. After I retreated to my chair, Goliath returned. He smelled the tuna. He licked his chops and stared at the can, but he was nervous around me. So I went inside. When I came back a few minutes later, Goliath was focused on licking out the can. Then one day he brought a date, a gray tabby with a short tail and a missing eye. For the first time in years, I felt whole. Like I had a purpose again, to take care of these innocent creatures. Most wouldn't come close, but Goliath had become my friend. While I watched the sun set, Goliath would sprawl across my lap and would purr when I scratched his ears. It was one family in particular, the Hubbards. The Hubbards had 5 boys between 7 and 14. All of them were incredibly ill-behaved. This was the same family that tried to claim that the lovely Hakim family was building bombs in their garage. Their eldest daughter was actually building an automatic feeder for their dog, and that the reason that one house down the street wasn't selling was because we had Alec and Derek living together, in sin. The poor couple actually moved away from how awful the harassment got. Goliath just yawned and licked his paw. The cats immediately gathered around Kirk, licking his face and purring to soothe him. I got up to check on him. Nothing was hurt except for the neutered Tom's pride. I reassured them, the police wouldn't do a thing about my babies, they weren't destroying property or using the other yards as their toilet. They didn't even meow loudly at night. That night became an entire chorus of yowls. I looked out of my bedroom window to see a whole clutter of cats gathered in the Hubbard's front yard. There had to be at least 25 to 30. In front was Goliath. I could make out his quivering hollers out of the rest. The minute a light would go on inside the house, the cats would scatter, leaving none in sight. I think a few times I saw Carla's husband John pitch something out of the window, probably a bottle considering the crash of glass, but as far as I could tell none made it close to a feline target. Even though it was wrong, I giggled like a schoolgirl before shutting off the light and going to bed. I'd had cats in the past. I could sleep through it. I sighed and lowered the petition. Carla, it wasn't anything I did that made the cats loud last night. They were in your yard, weren't they? My turn to look smug. That knocked the wind out of Carla's sails. She stammered for a second before snatching the petition out of my hands. This is your last warning. If you don't do something about these cats, I will. With that, she stormed off, and would have looked awfully haughty, had not Goliath darted from the bushes and tripped her. Carla fell flat on her nose and Goliath ran up to me, rubbing himself against my ankles and purring before entering my house. That was the first time Goliath entered my house. I'd never tried to take him in. But I was determined to keep him. A trim of his fur to get out the worst of the mats, a bath, and a collar later, Goliath looked like a real prince. A champion of his breed. Goliath got an extra pat on the back for that. It was a step too far when John put rat poison in his yard. Duchess, poor Duchess. She'd mistakenly eaten half of the tuna can left in his yard, laced with the deadly ground-up pellets. I found her barely alive on my porch. All I could do was take her inside and make her comfortable. Goliath was the most distressed, pacing around, mewing, licking Duchess' head every few seconds. I never knew a cat could love so much. When Duchess went lax and her breath came no more, he yowled so loudly I'm sure the whole town could hear it. A grieving cat, who lost his friend and love. I'm sure the woman would have punched me if I hadn't had the door between us. Instead, Carla started screaming. That was my birthday present. I don't know how you're doing this, but this ends now. I heard the chorus of hisses and growls from under my porch. Carla jumped out of her skin and shivered. She took a deep breath and glared. With that awful, awful threat, she stormed off. I stumbled onto the porch and sat on my chair, too nervous to stand. Oh, Goliath, what am I going to do? I whispered. Goliath licked my hand. His way of telling me it would be okay. It was the Hubbard boys, and they were armed with rocks again, the three youngest aiming at the cats who darted and dodged under the porch or into my backyard. I'm not sure if the oldest two were aiming for me or it was just an accident, but one rock smacked right next to my head, and the other cut open my forehead. It was like a demon from hell. The eldest boy stopped his bike, the others falling in behind him. He pulled another rock from his bag. Stupid cat. He pitched his arm back. And Goliath went for his throat. When I woke up, it was past midnight. The next morning I woke up and there was Goliath, sleeping across the other pillow. He was fine, he wasn't hurt. I tried to ignore the smell of blood in his breath as he nudged my face to get me up. Ma'am. Holly held up her badge, even though she knew I recognized her. I need to speak with you, please. Carla's grin grew darker. I invited Holly inside and we sat at the table together. Carla invited herself in and was standing in the corner, looking around my pristine house. Thought it'd be more of a mess than this, given the animals you have, she grumbled. I reached up and touched my forehead. I can't really remember, last night I got my head bumped something awful. I looked meaningfully at Carla, who sneered back. It's not anything serious, but no, I don't remember where the boys went. I think they just rode past the house on their bikes, they were saying some quite nasty things, but that's all I remember. Well, Carla stammered before she looked around. Where's that big one? The awful one, the one that attacked my sweet son. Mew. I looked down. There was a fluffy kitten, with black and orange fur and bright amber eyes. He jumped into my lap before hopping onto the table and sniffing Holly. Holly examined his collar. "So, this is Goliath?" She couldn't help it, she immediately started giggling. The ironic naming style, I dig it. "Hey, buddy, do you smell David? He's my German shepherd, he'd love to take care of a sweet little thing like you." Carla was completely flabbergasted. She opened her mouth and shut it a few times before saying, "No, that's not Goliath. Goliath is huge. He's practically a mountain lion." I saw them out, Carla was fuming and now I was the one grinning. Carla turned to me and hissed, "This isn't over. I will get the gun myself, and when the real Goliath shows up, I'm putting a bullet in his head." With that nasty threat, she stormed back to her house. I closed the door and turned around. Nervous, I went to my knees. "Gee. Goliath? How did you do that?" A few days ago the bones of a few adolescent boys were found. Picked clean. Carla didn't even try to come over, the marks on the bones were larger than anything a cat could make. The word through the grapevine is that it's probably someone's escaped pet lion. Adopted it as a baby and let it go when it was no longer cute. Even my son Dylan's going to come home, and bring his wife and twin children.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah. That's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
As you may agree, China is flawed from a political standpoint, most of the people in my generation know this. To be fair, I have friends in the Western world who feel the same way about their own leaders. As we have seen recently, viruses have no borders and it is incredibly important that the world is aware of my condition. I resent having to use a VPN just to post on this. Government censors are preventing me from telling my story through any form of Chinese media. I write to you now in what is a rare state of lucidness. Before my death I would like to make my story known. The source of my illness did not come from food or animal origin. Some strange food is consumed here, but the strangest of these foods, like bats and pangolins, are only consumed by a very small percentage of the population. You could compare it to the number of Americans who eat possum or armadillo. I personally like Subway and Pizza Hut, which is very popular here. The mycelium, which act like the roots of mushrooms, has only been found growing in underground caves deeper than 200 meters. No one has ever documented the fruiting of this mushroom, which is what happens when the mycelium produces its reproductive organs above ground. I took many photos, over 100 actually, wanting to capture it from all angles. I then attempted to take a spore print. To do this I have to cut off the cap of the mushroom, which I feel bad about doing, but it is essential to the further research of this species. Tao tried fruitlessly to wake me and hold me back, but as the nurse left I slipped into the empty transfer room and tore through the thick plastic waste bag with my nails. Tao described me as having inhuman strength and nothing he tried would stop me. When I brushed him away he was knocked down with incredible force. I consumed the entire leg, ripping the flesh from the bone like a rabid dog. The bones then crunching like cereal in my jaw. Thinking back on this I am so ashamed. How could my body and subconscious commit such a savage act? When we got home that's when Tao told me of my midnight episode. I did not believe him, but he showed me the blood under my nails and I broke down crying and afraid. I tried to throw up in the toilet but nothing came up. Tao was worried that if it happened again, he couldn't control me, I was too strong. We agreed that he would tie me to the bed tonight just in case. I had been tied to our bed before actually, and not against my will. When I fell asleep I had nightmares of being trapped in a cave, the rancid brain-like mushrooms surrounding me, unleashing their spore clouds. Tao was not in bed when I woke up. I was still tied. When he saw that I was awake he came over to untie me. The look in his eyes said it all. I looked at my legs and wrists, they were scratched from where I struggled against my restraints. As Tao leaned over me to free my arm, I saw the mark on his ear. Tao. In the night, you bit me. I was devastated and afraid, even though I did not know at the time what this would lead to. I didn't know if I was more scared of what was happening to me or more afraid of losing Tao. I'm sure he saw me for what I now was, a monster. To take my mind off things I returned to the lab to continue my studies. It was the weekend and I was there alone. I was studying the spore print under the microscope. I isolated a single spore on a slide and what I saw was unlike any spore I'd seen before. It resembled a virus rather than a spore, but on a much larger scale, on top of that it was moving. I had to prepare 3 more samples to be sure. While examining the 3rd slide I coughed and to my shock a dozen more spores appeared on the slide. I took a clean slide, spat on it and confirmed that my saliva was full of spores. Panic set in. When I'm anxious I clean, it somehow makes me feel better. I thoroughly cleaned all the equipment, with the strongest disinfectants in the lab. I packaged the mushroom cap and spore print in a dozen layers of specimen bags and labeled it as extremely hazardous before storing it in the ULT freezer. As I entered my own apartment I looked in the mirror. I had dark circles under my eyes, which themselves were dilated and bloodshot, my skin pale and my lips were a grayish purple. The feeling of not liking my own reflection is familiar to me, the feeling of being frightened by my own reflection was heartbreaking. Just by looking at Tao I knew he was infected too. He started experiencing symptoms the next day. They were the same as mine but at an accelerated pace. He did not get his period. At this point I attempted to notify the media, to warn people of our sickness. No one I spoke to took us seriously and all the posts I made online disappeared within hours. It was like screaming my warning into a void. I called my parents who lived in Shandong. I did not give them the full story but they were still concerned and volunteered to come look after me. I told them that I would get over it soon. I did not want to subject them to the illness and entering Shanghai is difficult under the current restrictions. The next day we stayed in. I knew the mushroom was the source of our sickness but Tao spent all his time online, researching our symptoms. When he stood up I thought he had found something, but he was unresponsive. He must have fallen asleep at his desk. He stood there for a long time, not moving, back turned to me. Tao grabbed her by the leg, lifting her with ease towards his drooling mouth. He pounced on the girl, like some great possessed ape, tears streamed her face. There was no chance of her escape. And that's when I did it. I brought the sword down on his neck. The replica sword had no sharpened edge. But the sheer weight of it against flesh was enough to nearly decapitate Tao. His broken spinal cord caused his body to fall limp on top of the girl, his head half attached. His mouth continued to snap open and closed until I swung the second blow, severing his head completely from his neck. But no one came and I couldn't keep myself awake. So I locked the apartment door from the inside and threw the key out the window. The next day I awoke to what looked like a burglary. My apartment was trashed, broken glass, upturned furniture and blood on the walls. It was no burglary though, it was me. The apartment door had been savagely clawed at and would probably not hold me for another night. My fingers were bloody and raw but I felt no pain. I caught myself in the mirror to see I've pulled out most of my hair, there was hair stuck between my teeth, I must have been eating it.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
This all started a week ago, when I lost my job and was running behind on bills. I lived in a simple house, and that job was all that held my life together. In desperation, I clicked on the shady ad. Slowly but surely a new website loads, with multiple links to different jobs with different descriptions. Deep web jobs. $100 per shift, stay in a camera room, watch all rooms, keep the house safe. Rules in link. $150 per field, harvest a field of corn. Tools are provided. Rules in link. I start to drift off, when I hear a buzz from my phone. Irritated, I get up and check my phone. A new email. I thought to myself. I clicked on the notification. Your application has been accepted. Always, no matter what you hear or see, stay in the camera room. From 12 until 1 you are allowed to roam the house, but make sure to be in the upstairs camera room by 1, turn all lights off, lock the doors, and close the blinds. From 1 until 2, watch the cameras. If you see a man in the living room watching TV, turn that camera off, until you hear the TV turn off from downstairs. Ignore any sounds you hear around the house. If you feel anything touch you, stop moving and close your eyes, until the feeling goes away. That is all. Your shift starts tomorrow night, at 471 Pedersen Drive. Sincerely, Mr. Salazar. All I could do the next day was think about what that email said. Man in the living room, woman in the kitchen, conversation with a person in the window. It all seemed too crazy to be true, but I couldn't help but to find myself 15 minutes before 12, with an old iPod in my pocket, standing at 471 Pedersen Drive. As soon as it hit 1 o'clock I felt a sudden dread, telling me to get up and leave right now. I turned on all the cameras and, on the back of my neck, it felt as if a feather was resting on it. The TV was lit up with some cooking show, and the man was chuckling while watching the show. I turned that camera off, and hoped I had done it fast enough. The sound from the TV echoed up the stairs, chilling me to the bone. What the hell is this place? I thought to myself, feeling queasy. And how is it only 1:20? The next 20 minutes were creepy as can be. Unknown sounds bounced around the house, the man laughing at the TV, watching all the cameras, until the silence hit me hard. The TV had been turned off, and dread had fell upon me again. The noise from the TV had been a constant for the past 20 minutes, but now that it was off, the silence felt threatening. I slowly turned on the camera and found the room to be empty. I sighed in relief. For what felt like an eternity, my eyes darted around the cameras, on edge, until the clock made a quiet beep, and it turned 2 o'clock. I rose from my chair and opened the blinds, revealing the pitch-black lawn outside. I sat back down as the clanging of pots and pans ringed in my ears. I looked down at the blue button beside the monitor, then at the lady, now cooking black eggs in the kitchen, and as I was about to press the button. Hi, how was your day? My voice was shaky. It was obvious that I was scared. It was nice to meet you too. Once that ordeal was over, I realized that the lady in the kitchen was gone, even though I never pressed the button. Oh no, no. I thought, I had broken one of the rules, and it was only 2:30. Now I'm sitting under the desk typing this out on my iPod, and there is a lady with a ragged apron on, walking in circles around the room. I'm scared to make any noise. So please, if you see an ad for dark web jobs, don't click it. Update. It's 4:30 now. I made it out of the house and I'm safe. My left leg is hurt a little, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what happened. The lady from the kitchen walked around the room, making soft groans and drooling everywhere. I kept as silent as I could, freezing time she turned in my direction. What I was supposed to do at this point was turn on the music on my iPod, close my eyes, and cover my ears, but hiding under the desk, I didn't know if I still had to do that. I waited and silence was all I could find, until the walls and floors of the house started to contort. The house shifted and moved into what looked like faces popping out of the walls. The only description of the sound I can think of is a scream of terror itself. 3:34. I got up, walked down the hallway, down the stairs, to the front door, and finally, the sweet, cool air of the night hit my face, and in that moment I felt a relief that was almost euphoric. I tried to fall asleep, but I couldn't get the faces out of my head. The look they had can't be explained. I don't know if I'm going to get my money, but at this point, I don't care. I just want to never go back to that house again. That is all, sincerely, Mr. Salazar. Part 2. My sleep last night was horrible. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened on my first shift. The whole day I stayed in bed, terrified for midnight to come, but it had to come eventually. 11:58, I put my iPod in the trash. 11:59, I lay in bed and close my eyes. I feel pressure on my feet, and my soft bed disappears from under me. I open my eyes and find myself inside that cursed house again, with my iPod, and a printed paper of the rules in my hands. What? How is this possible? I think to myself. I ran to the door, slamming my fists against it, wanting any way out, but to no avail. I couldn't leave. But then, I felt a hand wrap around my neck. I froze, closed my eyes, and tried to control myself. The grip closed tighter and tighter until I could barely breathe, then it finally left me alone. I gasped for air, and grabbed the printed paper of rules, given to me at the start of my shift. Hello again, Chris. I closed the blinds as quickly as I could and went to hide under the desk, but the desk is just a block, no space to hide under. I don't know what to do. I hear slow footsteps coming up the stairs. Oh God, the doorknob is turning. The door is locked. Oh thank God I remembered to lock it. She is screeching from behind the door. She's slamming her hands on it. It's only a matter of time until she breaks the whole door down. What do I do?
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
Did anyone else answer this ad on Reddit? By Sharpermat. Hey Reddit, my name is Matt. I'm kind of new to Reddit, so if this is in the wrong place, I'm really sorry. I'm still getting used to all the different subs. I think that's what they're called, right? The idea of a common topic for each community seems really cool. That's kind of what brings me here. I haven't been sleeping much lately, so I thought I'd post my story here in Nah Sleep and see if you all had any thoughts or advice. It all started a month or two ago when I lost my job. It was a factory job, and a pretty sweet one at that. I got paid to pick aluminum siding up off one line, check it for defects, and move it to another line. I did that for 10 hours a day, and did a pretty good job. The company got bought out, and they told us that robots could do our jobs just as well, and that was that. The company I'd worked at for 10 years just up and laid me off. I got a few weeks worth of pay as severance, so I guess that was okay. Unfortunately, I didn't really have any skills. Siding was the only thing I had ever done, and I wasn't really sure what I would do now. I got on with the job hunt and really tried hard. I thought for sure something would fall into my lap, but it just didn't. I started burning through my meager savings, and pretty soon, I was selling possessions to make ends meet. Yeah man, it's got all kinds of shit on there. Funny shit, sad shit, interesting shit, it's got all of it. Even naked ladies. I'm sure all of you are used to it by now, but Reddit is really overwhelming. There's content everywhere. Baby pandas rolling down hills, candlelight vigils that make you tear up, and something called a poop sock. I don't know what that is, and I'm not sure I want to. Reddit is kind of weird sometimes. They didn't even want that much information from me. They wanted my email address, and for me to answer a couple of questions. Do you consent to Gray and Dean Research monitoring you throughout the duration of the experiment? Do you understand that Gray and Dean Research may withhold compensation until a time where the experiment's criteria is met? Do you believe that you are your own person, and that your actions are your own? Subject. I clicked the link, entered my username and password, and I was in the site. I'm not really sure what I expected, but this definitely wasn't it. I was instructed to focus intently on a movie that they would be playing in my browser. I was to watch it for a minute, and then answer a series of questions. I read the instructions, and proceeded to the next step. I'm not sure what kind of video this was, but it wasn't like anything I had seen on Reddit before. It was red in the middle with a bunch of static around it. Something about it though, it made me feel different. As I'm writing this, I'm trying to find the words to explain how it made me feel, or why it felt slightly off, but I just can't. All I know is that the video wasn't right, and it made me feel disjointed and like I wasn't myself. Well yeah. I think so. I clicked yes. I guess so. I clicked yes. This question seemed fairly vague. What did they mean? I played a little bit of football in high school, and I had given out my share of hard hits. It wasn't mean-spirited though, it was just part of the game. I guess I could hurt someone though. I clicked yes. Would you kill someone? That's not even a question. Of course I'm my own person. The strange thing about this one was that there weren't multiple choices, just a yes box, so that's what I clicked. After I had completed all the questions, I glanced up at the clock and realized 2 hours had passed. Man, it was already 11 p.m. Where did the time go? I could have sworn that I started just 10 or 15 minutes ago. Also, when did I get such a splitting headache? I decided to take a nice hot shower and retire for the evening to get some much-needed sleep. Would I kill someone? Do I want to kill someone? Am I my own person? The disjointed thoughts kept racing through my head. I desperately wanted them to stop, but they just wouldn't. So I did something drastic. Something I try not to do, something bad. I smoked some weed. I know what you're thinking. Matt, you're working at a construction job and using tools that could hurt people. Why are you doing drugs the night before you have to work? I picked up. I waited for a few moments, but there was nothing but the faint whispers of static on the other end, and then a robotic voice saying words I didn't understand the meaning of. Then there was nothing. Just like that part of my life had been erased, and I was here in the present. Shit. I texted my boss and told him that I had been up all night sick, and lost track of time. I told him I'd stay home today, and be in tomorrow. He seemed to accept that, and I felt the smallest bit of my anxiety abated. I sat down on the bed and put the phone on the nightstand. My head was still splitting, and I just wanted it to stop. I put my head in my hands and felt my eyes welling up with tears of frustration and pain, and that's when I noticed it.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
I taught my dog to talk. Not with her voice, but with her paws. I own a 3-year-old Bichon Frise called Gidget. They are a remarkably intelligent breed, despite their yappy image. I taught her from a young age to do tricks and obey commands, and she was a bright and eager student. I always felt she had a lot to say. So when I saw videos on TikTok and Instagram of dogs who use programmed buttons to indicate their needs, I thought I might try it with Gidget. I bought a pack. Recorded my voice on the buttons. I kept it simple at first. I gave her buttons to make requests and to ask for things. Outside. Food. Water. Treat. Play. It was amazing to hear her preferences. To know why she whined or barked. Gidget listened, but turned her little head back to the corner. After a few minutes she came back to her board. Dark, she said again. No dark, I said. Light. I added more buttons, and with those buttons came more unease. I'd stand where she looked to show her it was okay. She would whine and cry and hit the stranger button. It upset me a lot. After a while, Gidget stopped using her buttons. She regressed. She stopped asking, outside, and would whine at the door instead. She stopped asking, food, and would stand by her bowl and cry. I didn't know where I had gone wrong. I stood in the corner she hated more often, trying to understand why she hated it. It was cold there, colder than anywhere else in our home, but very welcoming. I found it soothing, for some reason. But the more I stood there, the more she cried. It started to get annoying. It was just a stupid corner. I'm not sure what to do. Update. Gidget has regressed even more. She has started peeing in the house, which is incredibly frustrating. At first I brushed it off, then I took her to the vets. The vet said there was nothing physically wrong with her and said she seemed stressed. She's a dog. What has a dog got to be stressed about? I'm getting sick of cleaning up puddles of pee. I feel like I should punish her. Update 2. Gidget won't come near me now. Mom. Bye. Stupid creature. Can't she see I'm right here? Or is it too dark? You can find updates here.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
Astronaut 1, heart rate monitor failure. Astronaut 1, skin conductance monitor failure. Astronaut 1, VO2 monitor failure. The spacewalk itself was something else. The bag that surrounded Ben's body inflated in the vacuum and I instinctively felt the urge to undo what I'd done. There was a body in there, and bodies aren't meant to have so little between them and outer space. When I touched the bag, I could still feel him beneath the paper-thin material. The crease of an elbow. The bump of his nose. By the time I reached my destination, his body already felt brittle. Attaching him to the station was easy enough, on a technical level. Leaving him there went against every instinct I had. It was taped to the inside of a panel of a computer at his workstation. He must have hidden it close to his things, somewhere out of sight but easily retrievable. Frayed leaves and yellowed pages, like some ancient artifact. Last thing I expected to find in a space station. I almost mistook its leather cover for some sort of personal Bible, the sort of well-worn tome held up by a preacher making exclamations about the devil, but its insides were handwritten, and hardly in keeping with a Bible. Immolation. Permission denied. I bit my lip and took a deep breath. What about the station's integrity? I asked. I can hear something banging on the hull, I told them. And what if something had come loose? Something. Oh haha. At first I stuck to this notion strictly, asking myself what if some antenna or strap or bit of metal had gotten loose and was banging against the hull. That would be bad. But of course, that wasn't really what I was thinking. It's what I wrote to HQ about. Over and over and over. But what was really on my mind was the thought that maybe, somehow, he had gotten loose. And of course that's not so silly, right? The specially designed bag he was in, the one that would vent any gases produced by decomposition while maintaining his body's integrity, was brand spanking new. Know how many times it had been tested? Never. Never ever. Ben was the first. So of course it might come loose. Just because it's space-age technology doesn't mean it's sophisticated. He was strapped to the outside like a Christmas tree to the family sedan. Maybe, I wondered, one of the straps had broken and now he was thumping against the side every now and again. Never mind that there wasn't anything out there to prompt that kind of buffeting. No air. No wind. If he'd come loose he'd just float a little farther away. But something was making that noise, and I worried almost constantly that it was him. Only problem was I had cameras. Lots. And all of them, every single time, showed the same thing. The bag, barely changed from when I last saw it in person, strapped firmly and securely to the station's hull. This should have reassured me. Should have, but it didn't. Something was out there, tapping at the hull. On and off. No pattern. No reason. No correlation. It came and it went, seemingly choosing its moments to bother me the most. Sleep was difficult for multiple reasons. The tapping was bad enough, but lately my nightmares had taken a strange turn. Black. Cold. In them I was trapped in a suffocating film. Freezing cold. Non-stop agony, fighting furiously to free myself was this black void of a nightmare. Like all deeply terrible dreams, it colored my thoughts for the rest of the day, and each time I had it, it got harder to shake. I tried to endure. Compartmentalize. Take my mental turmoil and put it in a box, right unhinged across the lid, and sit rocking back and forth waiting for my rescue. And that was an option. A good one. But there was one little word that stopped me going the route of hunkering down and ignoring my own madness. Immolation. When HQ told me the date of the shuttle would reach me, I spent quite a bit of time wondering if this wasn't just some big experiment. The sheer coincidence of it all. The magnitude of it. They'd sent me the message and the subject line had 3 exclamation points, like the communications officer on the other side couldn't wait to deliver good news for once. Let their professionalism slip. They'd finally arranged a shuttle to retrieve me after it was done dropping some guys off at the ISS. It was lucky it had come so soon. A stroke of logistical genius allowed them to sneak Ben and me back without it being too conspicuous. I should be very thankful, they told me. What did HQ know? Cameras and remote operators. Not enough. No one else was in that tin can except me. Why even have humans in space if you wouldn't trust their instincts and judgments? I needed to know what was making that noise. I needed to get out there. /. It was my neck on the line, not theirs. I accepted it. Under time pressure HQ accepted it too. By the time the door finally opened and I was able to gently guide myself out and around the rim so that I was clinging onto the station's exterior, they'd already tapped into the cameras and were guiding me along to my destination. But it was background noise to me at that point. Their voices and little pings. Constant readouts of suit temperatures and the distance to the station hull. Meaningless. All of it. What mattered was the sound. Tap tap tap. What else could be causing the sound? I asked. The nameless voice on the other end sounded reticent, but that had been the default since Ben died. HQ always sounded like they were holding something back. We are not 100% certain how corpses would respond to the changing temperatures in vacuum. Obviously, parts of the body will freeze and expand. Fluids, in particular. Right now the bag has a lot of surface contact with the metallic hull. One theory is that blood may be freezing and sublimating as the surface beneath changes temperature. I looked at the bag and grimaced. How much blood, exactly? Of course I'd wanted this, hadn't I? To satisfy my morbid curiosity. To address the rabid thoughts in my mind that had kept me awake, filling what little sleep I had with nightmares. Now that I was at the threshold, I found myself so afraid that even moving my hand took a kind of effort. And yet I had no choice. I had to see this through. Multiple people watching my video feed gasped while I made a fairly unflattering noise somewhere between a moan and a cry. I'd expected something. God, at worst I'd expected something ghoulish. Blue skin. Icicles collecting around the eyelashes. Like a body found in the Arctic. But Ben had transformed. Great jagged shards of frozen blood had erupted from the eyes and ears and mouth, his jaw dislocated to an unnatural angle as an icicle the size of my forearm forced its way out. His neck was broken, his torso shredded with strips of flesh hanging off in ribbons, and his hands were clawing at his face with bizarre yellow nails. They'd even left grooves in his skin. What the fuck is this? I asked no one in particular, only to realize that HQ had been talking amongst themselves the whole time. A malfunction in the bag. No, this isn't normal. Let's not pretend this is normal. Muscle spasms, possibly caused by, well, whatever caused the unusual reaction in his circulatory system. Maybe that caused his arms to curl up towards his face. A dozen urgent, alarmed voices, all desperate to avoid even the slightest hint of responsibility, told me no, that was not possible. But looking down at Ben's tortured face, I couldn't help but feel a bit of doubt. I was about to ask what I ought to do next when the sun rose across the station. Unlike Earth, this wasn't a gentle morning. It flipped like a light switch. Thankfully the suit reacted before it had a chance to blind me, but the temperature began to rapidly climb. I watched as something beneath Ben's skin began to writhe in the new warmth. We can offer no further insight into the situation as of this moment. The footage you're sending us is under review by a panel of experts, HQ told me, somewhat urgently and robotically, like the person on the other end was stifling panic. Current orders are to take samples, reseal the bag, and return to the station. There was some mumbling before the same operator replied. Forget samples. Seal the bag. Return to the station. I was keen to leave and made the journey back faster than I should have. That crawling sensation you feel when being watched, it was all over me. Made me clumsy and I knocked myself more than once on the way back, like I was suddenly unused to the suit's controls. I just couldn't escape the notion that everywhere I looked someone or something had darted back just out of view. Of course that was impossible, so I told myself. What could survive out in space? But it only made it that much worse to imagine something slinking into the shadows. Tapping on the hull. Stalking me every step of the way back. When I finally reached the door, the tension inside me rose. If something was going to happen, it would happen now with my back turned on infinity. I had never felt so vulnerable. The sound made me jump. I'd been so focused on my surroundings I'd forgotten I was being supervised by a room full of people 1,000 miles away. What is it? Reynolds, we're seeing something here we're not sure of. Being told you should hold off on returning. Something about the voice on the other end made my stomach sink. They didn't just sound confused, And make no mistake, when you're clinging to the side of a station all on your own, confused would have been bad enough. But no, there was something else. There's an anomaly, they added. No one down here knows how to proceed. We're currently seeking input from higher ups. This is unprecedented. It began with, signals from some of the biomonitors. Specifically Ben's. Yes. And the cameras are, at first we thought they were malfunctioning. It appeared as if Ben's bag was empty. And then, Reynolds, we noticed something. Something else. Guys, what's going on here? I'm being told I can't say more. Just wait. I tightened my grip on the railing, my heart pounding. Finally the door cycled open and I was ready to disregard all orders when the man speaking to me from HQ practically screamed in my ear. Don't enter. Reynolds. Do not enter the station. What we're seeing on the cameras, you can't let that in. If something's out here, I'm getting to safety before it reaches me. I stopped. My brain processed. I'd heard that. I'd heard something in the vacuum of space. I looked around at my hands, my feet. That couldn't be possible. Not unless. The man in HQ spoke in a terrifying whisper. The terror that shot through me was electric. White fire coursing through my veins. Without even thinking, I reacted like I just found out there was a grenade strapped to my back. All instinct. No rationality. I cried out and swung around, trying to knock Ben off my back, but all I accomplished was setting off some alarms as I damaged my suit. I thrashed desperately and felt something shuffling around the exterior of the bulky suit. Finally, my eyes fell on something useful. The jet controls. I fumbled my hands into place and immediately blasted myself into the open pressure chamber, turning at the last minute so that the back of the suit smashed into the thick secondary door. I only hoped that whatever was clinging to the back of me was destroyed by the impact, but when I looked up, Ben was still out there gawping at me with a mouth full of frozen blood. Slowly, his movement packed with the eerie confidence of a predator, he prepared to enter the station. /. There was no ignoring Ben or the sounds he made. Not anymore. Terrible thumps that battered the station, their location changing seemingly at random. This drove the people on the ground insane. Oh, I'd heard my fair share of rationalization over the last few hours. Been sent books worth of written material from every type of expert you could imagine. Ever since my colleague's death I'd been wrestling with all sorts of bizarre thoughts, but after the spacewalk it was like they'd spilled out of my head and were now terrorizing other like-minded skeptics. Try as they might, no one in HQ could make sense of it. Like Ben did, when he was just 10 and playing with hobbyist Dad's backyard telescope. A light in the darkness. A light that spoke to a few instruments Ben had adjusted to record each little emission. Flash on. Flash off. Flash on. Flash off. Flash on. Tap. 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 Binary to hexadecimal, and from there. God, something else. Something that spoke to him. I don't know what scared me more. The sound of a reanimated Ben pounding away at the station, an imminent all-too-near threat. Or the thought of something in the void whispering unknown secrets to a man for the last 2 decades. An idea that occasionally rose over me like the tide, swallowing me whole if I dwelt on it for more than a few moments. I never did figure out what the transmission was saying, but I was transfixed nonetheless. Not just by Ben's little journal that contained hundreds, thousands, of handwritten records. But the live transmission he had set up on his computer, the one he'd converted into a sound. It was like an earworm on steroids. Like white noise made of acid, a flood of alien ideas that left me confused and drooling if I listened for too long. All told, I spent no more than a few days with access to that transmission, and by the end I felt like I was on the verge of melting away. But Ben had been exposed to that thing since his childhood. Spent years and years listening and recording and waiting, working towards something none of us could really hope to understand. I had to assume that transmission was responsible for his death, and even worse, what had happened to him afterwards. Had it always been the reason for his coming to space? The sound, the light coming from out there. It felt wrong. It wasn't a gentle lull or a siren's pull. It was dark and overpowering. Why had he given into it? Why had he done everything it wanted? How much of his life had been lived because of its needs and wants? Reynolds, I'm being told this is going to be a bit of unconventional pickup. I scoffed as I finished suiting up. That was an understatement. Yup, I replied. You'll know it when you see it. I had my back to the station no more than a few seconds when the pilot grunted. Jesus Christ, what the fuck is that thing? Reynolds, you need to get yourself stabilized. Much further and we won't be able to help. And whatever you do, you need to know, that fucking thing isn't coming aboard this shuttle. I wanted to reply, but I was busy trying to get an arm between me and Ben, who was now a profusion of jagged red crystals of varying sizes. Some as big as kitchen knives, others like sewing needles. A space suit's worst nightmare. A puncture wouldn't lead to the immediate decompression you're probably thinking of. Instead, I'd have a few moments at most before the air enveloping the suit dissipated, and after that my lungs would collapse, my blood would start to boil, and the water inside my eyes, nose, ears and other soft tissues would vaporize and try to escape. Like frostbite on fast forward. But punctures weren't my sole concern. I knew I had to stop Ben's hands getting a grip on the helmet. I don't know if whatever had animated him had access to all his memories, but Ben sure as shit knew how to remove a helmet from the exterior, so all my focus went on keeping his nasty little fingers away from my neck. A puncture would still leave me enough time to return to the shuttle, but with no helmet I'd be doomed to a very painful death. So I fought the best I could, knowing everything hinged on me pushing him away. But Ben was lithe and insectal, constantly slipping out of reach whenever I got close to giving him a good shove. His fingers could easily find purchase on the suit and its many little greeblies, while I was basically wielding oven gloves that offered no dexterity. I had no hope of shaking him off the usual way, but I did have something on my side. Inertia. The whole time we'd been spinning furiously, and that rotational force was just about the only thing trying to peel the two of us apart. So far I'd been fighting it, but why? I realized at the last moment I had one option left, so I jammed half thrusters on and decided to make the nearly out of control spin much worse. Normally an uncontrolled spin is one of those nightmare scenarios any astronaut dreads. Humans are irregularly shaped, and once you start rotating along more than one axis, applying more force is likely just to make it worse. Correcting takes a huge amount of experience and insight, and even then there's no guarantee you can stop it. More likely is that by the time you figure out what you need to do, the rotational forces will have you on the brink of unconsciousness. And from there death is just a stone's throw away. The last thing I remembered before I lost consciousness was the sight of Ben's monstrous face being flung off into the void. I came to aboard the shuttle, several men and women crowded around me. I groaned and made eyes towards the person who had spoken. It sounded like the pilot. Nice to put a face to the voice. You spun right towards us. We were already suited up and on our way. Timed up well. That suit was riddled with holes. Any later and we wouldn't have been around to catch you and get you into safety. As it is, pal, you're going home. Medical check shows no real issues. I think you're going to be okay. Where's Where's Ben? The people around me shared a funny look before one of them realized. I nodded. Well, he's gone, they replied. If that really was your colleague, we're sorry. I feel like there's a story we're missing. The pilot thought for a second.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Krampus, by R.H.A. 3 Gar. Each year on December 5th, a person in my hometown is brutally murdered. The police are at a loss. With each victim, a poetic story is left behind. Below are the stories from the past 3 years. The cold night came, and Frederick rested his head. But soon he heard a scratching, underneath his bed. Frederick trembled as he looked, oil lamp in hand. On his bedroom floor, the demon had a plan. Away with you, beast, the night is dark and long. You have no business here, for I have done no wrong. Krampus only laughed, as he shook his rusty chain. He hung Frederick by the neck, until he writhed in pain. The links constricted, digging into skin. Frederick then cried out, paying for his sin. He begged and pleaded, until his final breath. With a beautiful snap, Frederick bled to death. Herman was a doctor, for that's what he would say. And every single patient, they would have to pay. He cut, and pulled, and burned. And after he was done, for more he always yearned. This surgeon was a butcher, who had a taste for swine. With their bleeding flesh, he'd pair a fine red wine. The hunger took him, body, mind and soul. Yet this evil, it never took its toll. The police are seeking any information that may help bring the killer to justice. As of this morning, 3 more bodies have been found in a neighboring village.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
What does Google want with male sex workers? Google's algorithmic decay, a report on the Lenore, North Carolina bombing. In 1979, the U.S. Embassy in Moscow was losing more than 120 informants a year to Russian KGB. By 1981, that number had dropped to just 10. Now, a former intelligence agent is raising alarm that the wildly unorthodox methods once used to protect Russian sources could pose a devastating new threat. After winning $1.3 million at a casino, why does a man cover himself in gasoline and drop a lit match? A report on the Gray Men of 327, Cedar Lane. This was part of a collaborative project with /U/and Lewis, who wrote the incident that takes place prior, the Gray Men of 327, Cedar Lane. At 6'1", 41 years of age, and net worth of hundreds of millions, prodigious venture capitalist Dean Banks should be the envy of the world. But he's not. What is unusual is that since the kidnapping, Dean has become a vigorous advocate of free-range chicken farms, and now refuses to eat the animal himself. An odd trauma for a survivor to come away with, but one more consequential to Dean, who in 2017 became a member of the board of directors at Tyson Foods, one of America's largest suppliers of chicken. Based on dozens of interviews with Mr. Banks, representatives from Tyson Foods Inc., and law enforcement in Idaho and Wyoming, as well as documents and correspondence provided by Banks and other sources, this special investigative report by independent journalist Myra Kindle lays out in chilling horror the 6-day ordeal and subsequent cover-up of the Dean Banks kidnapping. Dean's argument is not substantively new. Chicken farms have often been the target of animal rights activists who argue chickens aren't given enough space to walk, and live most of their life in a dark, crowded coops, eating till they're ready for slaughter. While it's true Tyson owns very few farms themselves and is mainly a distributor, Tyson works extensively with private farms to set up new chicken operations. Tyson doesn't own the land, but they essentially tell farmers how to run their operation, says Eduardo Porter, economics reporter for the New York Times. For example, if you want to invest in building a new chicken coop, a commercial bank typically won't underwrite that loan. You go to a company like Tyson and say you'll sell them chickens for X many years if they loan you the money to scale up. But in that agreement is the implicit understanding that if Tyson doesn't like what you're building, say they think more chickens could fit in that coop you want to build, they'll deny the request. They have incredible control over chicken farms. It's just indirect control. Dean's explanation for how he could go from Tyson board member to chicken rights activist. Number conflicting stories. Outside a bar in Wyoming near the border of Idaho, Dean yelled frantically, emotionally, till the bar called the police and Dean was sent to St. John's Medical Center in Jackson, Wyoming. At the hospital, Dean was treated for dehydration and minor bruising, and then was moved to the mental health ward where he was kept under observation for 3 days. Dean says he remembers nothing about how he got to Wyoming, or how he ended up specifically at that bar. For Dean, it's the intervening 6 days that he remembers, but was also severely hesitant to talk about at first. I'm worried the public will say what Tyson says, what the police say, that I'm making it all up, says Dean. He has reason to be worried. Dean's story is fantastical, and arguably the reason for a lot of his current troubles. I can't deny what happened, says Dean. I can only tell you that they gave me the memory implants of a chicken's life, and it was fucking horrifying. It's dark. It's hot. You're standing on grating that cuts into your feet and you don't even have enough room to rotate your body, says Dean. And then the screams, the never-ending screams of a room of creatures that don't understand what's happening but know they're in pain. All the while the smell of feces is just putrid. The chickens are stacked, so the droppings from who was above me dropped onto my face, my body, and again I didn't have enough room so I couldn't wipe it off. I just wanted to die, but even that was impossible. Neither Tyson Foods nor police in Wyoming or Idaho believe Dean's telling of his abduction, and have separate views themselves about what happened. We have no evidence to back Mr. Banks's claim of being implanted with the memories of a chicken, says Attorney General for Wyoming, Bridget Hill. The Idaho Attorney General referred me to Ms. Hill's statement when asked for comment. Off the record, local police officers were more forthcoming on their opinions of what happened to Mr. Banks. Totally believe him, says Officer Steve of Idaho, who asked I only use his first name. This type of stuff happens all the time. Drug lords in Mexico put the memories of dogs in their hit men to toughen them up. This is nothing new. Another officer from Wyoming, who only agreed to speak anonymously, has another theory. I don't know about memory implants, but I'll tell you that guy was on drugs when we picked him up, psychedelics or something. Number the $87,250. Why was Dean Banks released on December 18, 2018? It's a question the police and Tyson don't have an answer to, but one Dean readily has a response for. In Dean's telling, Tyson was contacted following his kidnapping and asked to pay $87,250 for his release. Dean notes that this request didn't go to his family, who would have paid it, he says, but directly to Tyson corporate. The denials by Tyson and police are clear, but there is contrary evidence there was indeed a ransom. Tyson has good reason to lie about making a ransom payment. Although prosecutions for it are nearly non-existent, under Section 1202 of Federal Penal Code 18, it is illegal to make a ransom payment. I think what's good for the survivor here is going to be bad for the community, so we're just not going after this one, says a detective in Idaho who only agreed to comment anonymously. Justice is hard enough to get when it's what everyone wants, says Dean. But in this case, I think I'm the only one who wants it, so what kind of a chance is that, really? For fear of cutting into profits from bad press coverage, he says, Tyson is willing to let someone who committed a serious crime go free. If we speak about the ransom, says Martha, Tyson has threatened to sue on defamation. It's a risk just talking to you now. Number Wellis Farms. Since I started covering this story in February, I've driven countless hours on Midwestern roads between Sun Valley, Idaho and Jackson, Wyoming. Along the way I stopped at several chicken farms to learn, firsthand, how chickens are kept and raised, and to verify Dean's claim of arguable animal cruelty at many of these farms. 100-grand mistake is what that is, he says, and refuses to say much more. It was a project and it didn't work out, is all I can get him to add. While not definitive evidence of wrongdoing, I was able to find a series of building plans filed with the local building inspector in Bonneville County, where Wellis Farms is located. Listed publicly for that property is a set of documents for construction of a chicken coop filed in 2011. There are two plans, one from Wellis, and a revised version by the underwriter of his loan, Tyson Foods. Wellis's plan was for a modestly packed coop. The revised plan from Tyson called for a chicken coop with 8 times the occupancy. The amount for the loan, $87,250. While perhaps just an amazing coincidence, this information was provided to Tyson, law enforcement in Wyoming and Idaho, and Dean Banks. Dean was the least ambivalent. After contacting Wellis, Dean said, "It'd be an awful thing if he was the one who kidnapped me, it really would. Because he doesn't seem like such a bad guy." Myra Kindle is an independent investigative reporter. She covers tech, law, politics, and other stories that would be impossible to write about in more traditional outlets.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
I respond to him with a smile as wide as I can. He does not smile. His eyes are tired. "You should go to the doctor if you're feeling ill, neighbor. They have medications that can help fix the issues that are keeping you from sleeping." Yeah. Been meaning to do that, to get over there. Yeah. His response is unsatisfactory, and the manager would most definitely not find it acceptable. "You should get over to the company store too, Daniel. I've heard they miss you there." "I know, yeah. She's sick too." He offers me a half-hearted smile and a weak nod, before stepping into the darkness of his home and motioning to close the door. I can't let him leave like that, though. My eyes take a moment to adjust to the darkness. Daniel has blocked his windows with thick blankets, letting barely any shards of light through. I notice seed packets on his floor. Vegetables. The company does not frown on gardens, but they do frown on self-neglect. And not going to the store is self-neglect. The pieces snap together in my mind like a puzzle. His body folds and collapses, like his legs have struggled too hard to support the weight of his crimes. He kneels on the floor, his overgrown hair catching more sunlight than it probably had in days. His back rises and falls, and I hear his deep, choking sobs as he struggles to speak. "What do you mean, neighbor?" I had no need to ask. The company food makes us all sick when we are new. Half of my teeth have been replaced by the company since I have been here. Now I am sure to drink extra of the company's milk, so I can preserve the rest. But we did not talk of these things in polite company. You never know whom might be listening.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
I love my husband more than anything in the world, so I did what was best for our marriage, by inking me coffee. At first, I was really quite nice about it. I cooked his favorite meals, organized outings, and paraded around in lingerie that he used to go crazy over, even months ago. But then he slipped further and further away, and I spent every night biting my fist, trying not to let my sobs tear me apart, as I lay alone in our big, beautiful bed. He walked in there 5 minutes later, while I was wiping my big knife, like I knew he would. He had noticed the silence in the house. Our golden retriever, my husband's wedding gift from his father. Leo and I tolerated each other for his sake, but I hated how much he loved that dog. I was never any good at sharing. That's all he could think about after being away for 10 days. I was glad he was gone, so my husband could finally focus on me, on us. I could almost hear his heart turn over in that well-muscled chest of his. What did you do? The handle on the knife wasn't clean enough. I knew that would worry at me, so I started working on that next. My husband stared at me like he was seeing a new woman. But he wasn't. Of course he knew deep down, I love him more than anything in the world and I would do anything for us. What do you want me to do? He whispered. I noticed his white knuckles gripping the edge of the table, and I went over and placed my hand over them. I tried not to feel hurt when he recoiled from my touch. I know it was difficult for him, but I also know he now understands how important our marriage is to me. He's not going to leave me again. Yes. But I didn't like how he said that, like the word tore out of him. So I made him call everyone who knew about his floozy, and tell them how he realized that there was never anyone else for him but me and nothing would break us apart. Then I poured him his favorite whiskey, and as he grew incoherent with grief for that wretched dog, I drew him to me and smiled as the familiar desire shut everything else out for both of us. We were sitting across each other at the dining table, when the doorbell rang. I got up and opened the door before the scratching and yapping got worse. So how was the movie?
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
I received a text from my wife, while sat next to her, by Phoenix Flies. Those 3 simple words on my screen, arranged just so, gave me the most profound sense of dread I had experienced to date. 9 letters, and one overwhelming sinking feeling in my gut. I turned to Sophie, as casually as I could muster. Where's your phone, hun? Fair enough, I murmured, trying to mask my unease. There was definitely something wrong with Sophie. Something felt off. Thinking back, she hadn't looked me in the eye since I came home with dinner. She had simply served up the chow mein and sat in front of the TV to wait for me. Maybe she was frustrated at having left her phone with her friend earlier. She's usually attached to that thing like an 4-drip. Maybe she was feeling the withdrawal from her social media feed, but was too embarrassed to admit. Maybe she too was hiding how she felt behind a mask of nonchalance. Maybe. Lowering my phone, I tilted my head to Sophie and offered a goofy smile, like we often do with each other in quiet or awkward moments. She didn't turn away from the TV. I could make out the half-reflection of one eye in the side of her glasses. Aside from occasionally chewing a mouthful, she seemed vacant. Face firmly in the mask, I tried to strike up a conversation. How was Harriet earlier? I nodded like it was no big issue and tried to turn my attention to the movie, something Soph had chosen about a bunch of teenagers stranded at sea. They'd forgotten to lower the ladder before all jumping off their boat for a swim. The realization had just struck them, and fear was starting to take hold. I feebly threw back a kitchen, get a drink, the best I could scramble together, the room beginning to spin as I left. I threw my plate onto the countertop with a crash and leaned over the kitchen sink, breathing heavy, convinced I was going to be sick. I ran the water cold and splashed the sweat from my face. Everything felt wrong. Your drink. Your drink, Sophie repeated, firmer this time. Her form came back into clear focus as she set down a glass of water, my own glass of water, untouched. The glass of water I had left in the other room, before departing to get a drink. Somehow, my stomach found somewhere lower to sink. A motion caught my eye. The plate of half-eaten chow mein I had set down was shifting, pulsating. Among the noodles were dark worms, subtly squirming and undulating. The nausea returned in a crashing wave as I pictured them inside me, alive and writhing around, not knowing how many I had already consumed. Clutching my gut as if to keep it from churning, I pointed at the plate. "What did you put in the food?" She didn't respond, but stepped closer to the kitchen counter and set the glass down. The water within shimmered unnaturally in the starker light of the kitchen, as if laced with glitter. Her eyes shone through her glasses as she leaned over the counter. "Have you had much to drink today? I think you're dehydrated." I ran. I swept the plate and the glass off the counter in her direction, and I ran without looking back. My knees were weak with whatever she had slipped into my food, but I made it into the garage, snatching up my car keys on the way. I scrambled into the front seat, slamming the door behind me and hitting the locks just as Sophie, or not Sophie, tried the handle. I backed up against the passenger door, gasping for every breath. My chest was taut. Everything was spinning. I knew I was losing consciousness. I had dropped the keys somewhere, and as much as I tried to reach for them, I found only bruises, flailing my limp arm helplessly between the door and gearbox. I felt something trickle from the corner of my mouth. She stooped to glare at me through the driver's side window. Her glasses reflected the garage lights overhead, setting her eyes ablaze. For a moment I thought of those stranded kids in the movie, how they must be huddling together in the blood right about now, the sharks circling, waiting to strike. I thought of those sharks, and the darkness came. I awoke, my head a fog, to find the car locks and windows intact. A note sat on the windscreen, facing inwards, written with an unfamiliar hand. 3.12 She's here. 6.34 Sorry about Harriet. Everything okay? Back soon. Stay there. X. I revved the car into life and floored it, pressing against the garage door, the wheels spinning on the concrete floor. The door didn't budge. I backed up as much as the garage would allow, and slammed my foot onto the accelerator. Metal met metal with a sickening screech, but the door hardly gave at all. Again I reversed and surged forwards, 3 times, 4. 5. I could see a crack of light as the door weakened. 6. 7. Daylight was flooding in, it would only take a few more. 8. 9. I almost hesitated. I tried to call Harriet. No answer. I thought about calling the police, but talked myself out of it. They wouldn't look too kindly on a fugitive rolling up in the murder weapon. Abandoning the mess of a vehicle by the roadside, I set off into the woods. The forest was deep, and I took a meandering route through. On the other side I eventually came across a car rental company, took their most affordable option, and headed off in a different direction. Days have passed, and I haven't been tracked down. I've been listening attentively to the news, there hasn't been any mention of the horrific hit-and-run incident. I can only assume that means a victim hadn't been found. I can't keep going like this, living out of an overdue rental car, waking to screams that echo around the truck stops. I hardly recognize myself in the mirror, my eyes are sunken, my skin pale. My hair is coming out in clumps. I look hollow. I've never suffered from nosebleeds before, but it feels like I've always got a tissue in my hand, fighting a constant stream. Whatever damage those black worms have begun to cause, I doubt they're finished with me.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
It was the defining feature. A stone monolith, rising out of the earth like a haunted spire, sweeping its glowing gaze out across the rage of the Atlantic Ocean. Cold Rock Keep was different from other lighthouses, though. Cold Rock Keep had a body count. Ever since anybody could remember, the island had been a haunted affair. A cursed place where ships went to die. The legend went that once upon a time, way back when the town was first erected in God knows when, there lived a coven of witches upon Cold Rock. They practiced their craft there because they thought the ocean would keep them safe. And it did. For a time. But like any old story, the players eventually disappear, and so too was the case with these witches. They died off, or were killed. Who can say? History has a funny way of forgetting itself. Whatever the case was, the shipwrecks didn't let up, and so a lighthouse was built on the island to warn ships away from its serrated shores. That lighthouse, though, didn't seem to help matters one bit. In fact, after it was built the deaths just went up, and soon the jagged coastline of Cold Rock was filled with the corpses of shattered vessels. It didn't take long for the townsfolk to come to an agreement that the island was cursed, and that the lighthouse had somehow become a conduit for that evil. Don't drift too close to the lighthouse, they'd say, unless you want the ocean to gobble you up. I'd sooner row a skiff through a storm, he'd say, a pint of beer in his hand, than drift the Trout's Kiss past Cold Rock. Capsized. See, my brother was a superstitious man. A good sailor. There was no way he'd find himself near those rocks if not for some darkness pulling him there, and maybe that same darkness had then begun pulling me, or maybe it was just my childhood grief, but not a week after his funeral I went down to the docks and untied his skiff. I rowed it out into the harbor. Too long, I decided, had that towering mausoleum lorded itself over our gentle town. Too long had it stolen our loved ones and filled them with the sea. It was time somebody did something about it, and in that moment, on that brisk summer night, I decided that somebody would be me. So I set off toward the sweeping beacon that haunted the ocean like a ghost in the dark. I rowed and rowed until I got close enough that rowing didn't do much anymore, because the ocean became all rolling waves and riptide currents. I remember feeling panicked. Like I'd made a grave mistake, an impulsive decision that I was now going to sorely regret, as I tossed and churned in the soup of the sea. First I lost one oar, then the other. Then the boat tipped over like a rubber duck in the bath, and the looming figure of the lighthouse vanished. Darkness took me. Frigid, wet darkness. When I came to, I spat out a river of seawater. Trembling and disoriented, I gathered my bearings. Surrounding me was a mess of wood, the remnants of my little skiff, or some other sorry vessel. Not 10 feet away, great waves thundered against razor-blade rocks, jutting out of the coastline like the jaws of a shark while their sea spray washed over me, reminding me where I was, and what I was doing. I pulled myself to my feet and realized I'd come all this way without much of a plan. In retrospect, I wondered if I ever truly meant to make it there at all. Perhaps I had been so sick with grief that I was hoping that the ocean would simply swallow me up the same place it had swallowed George, and then it would let us be together again. Perhaps I just wanted an end to my misery. Whatever the case, I didn't have anywhere to go but forward, and so I walked toward the lighthouse. As I did, I passed stone columns. Gravestones, I realized, carved with effigies for men whose stories I knew better than any nursery rhyme. Rupert Duget, 1892. The lighthouse had always been monstrous, that much wasn't up for debate. Whether it smashed you on the rocks or drove you mad once you washed ashore, Cold Rock Keep would take what it wanted and leave the world more miserable for it. Something tugged at me then. Something pulled me toward it, and I knew then that it was the room the light spun in lazy circles, tempting souls to their deaths. It was the source of all this misery. Heart thrumming, I took the stairs 2 at a time. When I reached the top, I found the hatch sealed shut. An old padlock hung off of it that read maintenance key number 1. While I didn't have the maintenance key, I did have a rock, and so I bashed the padlock clean off the hatch and pulled it open. Light blinded me. Vicious, vibrant light spilled out like an uncorked supernova. My ears filled with the whirring drone of whatever mechanism drove the artificial sun. Shielding my eyes, I clambered up the ladder leading into the hatch, 1 step, 2 step, until I was in the room proper. And then something strange happened. Things became dim. I opened my eyes and found the blistering light gone. In its place was a faint glow, and even that was quickly fading, receding back into some great void until it was only a firefly speck in the distance. Then, that too vanished. My hand scrambled across the surface, looking for the hatch I'd come through, but it was nowhere. Gone. Kaput. I shouted and I hollered, cursing the lighthouse, cursing myself for being foolish enough to stroll onto Satan's doorstep with nothing but a rock and an old pocket knife, but predictably that didn't solve my problem either. Eventually, out of options, I sat down in the void and cried. I cried for my mother, who would wake up tomorrow worried sick, wondering where I was, calling me in as missing to the sheriff. They'd search and never find me, and she'd just tell them to search some more because there would be no way, no possible way, that she could go on living if she knew both of her babies were gone. I cried for my father, who was out of town on business and would no doubt blame himself for him always being away or abroad, and then maybe one day he'd get so fed up with all the guilt that he'd turn it around on my mother and tell her she should have been watching me better. Most of all though, I cried for my brother. I cried for George because he had always told me to steer clear of Cold Rock Keep, and then he even died to teach me that lesson, but I stuck my nose up at him. I decided I knew better than he did, even though he was the fisherman and I was the stupid little brother, and I came out here looking for revenge, and all I managed to do was make things so much worse. Look at this one, a nasally voice said. He hasn't any light. He will join the others. The others? I shouted. You mean my brother? You're them, I stammered, my mouth too dry to properly speak. You're the witches, aren't you? Agatha's nasally voice snickered. Oh, look how perceptive the child is, sister. I hardly think the world will miss a lightless dunce she as he. Let me do it now. I'll be quick about it. Hush, Beatrice. Child, I sense a haunting in your soul, a longing for your brother. Do you miss him? The question made me furious. It was proof, I realized, that the witches knew about the murders they were committing, knew about the pain they were causing, and yet still chose to reap our community again and again. Tears welled in my eyes. Yes, I said, lips trembling. Yes, of course I miss him. Do you have any idea how many innocent folks you've gone and killed? Do you have any idea how many we've saved? See, Agatha. Look there, near his chest. Just about anybody's got some light in them, you bleeding heart. What we mean, Agatha began, somewhat impatiently, is that Beatrice and I lived peacefully on Cold Rock Island for many, many years. We practiced the magic of the land. Grew our crops. Caught our fish. We didn't hurt anybody, but one night a vessel goes and lands on our shores, ties us up in the middle of the night and burns our bodies in a pit. A pit. They drink for hours and hours after that, a real revel, exchanging high fives and how do you dos. Beatrice sighed. They slept in our ashes. I took precautions, Beatrice says. You tried to beat them with a club. Must you always interrupt? I'm being kind enough to give this little cretin some context before we snip him. The least you could do is pipe down for his bedtime story. Agatha took a moment, and I could sense the two witches glaring at one another in the darkness. Anyway, dunce boy, where was I? Ah yes, we made damn sure our murderers met an end that suited them. Sent them all into a rage, didn't we? Made 'em chop each other up. Ha! Poetic justice, you might say. Beatty and I figured we'd just go ahead and get rid of that bad lot before they infected anybody else with all that hatred. Then, wouldn't you know it? We found out that once you're dead you're much more in tune with the spirits of folks. Learned we could measure the worth of a man from 1,000 yards based on the size of his glow. And often we did. Not a lot to do when you're dead, you see, and my sister and I do like to keep busy, so we set to work doing the town a favor. Not in the least, sweet little fool, Agatha said. We only killed the bad eggs. The rest of the folks washed up on shore and somebody came around for them, eventually. Same goes for those lighthouse keepers, most of them, anyhow. There was that one doing work on the roof before a storm. Poor sod got blown halfway across the island before making a mess on the rocks. Howie, you mean Howard? Agatha let loose a snort of laughter. Poor lad was a smidge clairvoyant and never knew it. Said he heard voices, and I suspect he did. Overheard me and Aggie arguing till the break of dawn like a couple of braying donkeys. It's no wonder he drank himself to death. A shame. Yes, a shame. The man had a great taste in whiskey. Oh, Agatha says, somewhat shocked. He can see us now, can he? Course he can, look at him. He's glowing, isn't he? A question lingered in my mind. Why is it that your magic became more powerful after the lighthouse was built? More powerful? Beatrice said, confusion lacing her words. Whatever do you mean? Oh, I said, and another thought crossed my mind. As it did, the shapes slowly faded from view. My glow, I realized, was dimming and the void was beginning to grow suffocating all over again. And my brother? Why did you kill him? Hush now, Aggie. Have a heart. Tears formed in my eyes, and I quickly dabbed them with my sleeve. What do you mean you didn't kill him? He died out there on those rocks. His boat capsized not 100 yards away. Reed Vallis, of course. Yes. We had only intended for that fellow, he was the first mate on the boat your brother captained. That man was an urchin. A rapist. A murderer. He was a stain on this town, and frankly the world is much better off without him. Dunce, child. Agatha said. Weren't you even listening? We just told you we didn't. Your brother was meant to wash safely ashore. Honest. Sadly, Reed panicked after the Trout's Kiss capsized, and not wearing a float vest, grabbed onto your brother to save his own life, and ended up drowning the both of them. The words washed over me like a winter tide. Cold. Painful. And you let Reed pull him down. You didn't try to help. Are there many moments like that? I muttered quietly, the light radiating from me flickering in the dark. Off and on. Off and on. It was as though it couldn't decide whether it wanted to stay or go. Do many innocent people die because of the things you do? Silence filled the void. If the darkness had been thick and suffocating, then this silence was like the bottom of the ocean. It felt heavy. Crushing. Sometimes, Beatrice said. Sometimes I suppose that innocent folks do get washed away. Is that okay? I asked, my tiny voice cracking under the weight of the question. It didn't feel okay to me. Why did innocent folks have to die so bad people could be punished? Should you really be doing that? Beatrice began. I'm not sure. Beatty, Agatha said, and her voice was hushed. You're glowing. True to Beatrice's words, the both of them were beginning to radiate a faint glow. The shapes danced upward, bickering to one another in words I couldn't quite understand. They swirled and snapped and whipped about over my head, until eventually they stopped and floated back down, now bright things. We've had it out, Aggie and I, and we've decided you're right. Course you are, dunce boy, Agatha said. We got so wrapped up in keeping busy and trying to do good, that we forgot to nurture the most important light of all, our own. Beatrice snickered. Oh, look at you, Aggie. First you wanted to purge the poor child and now you're doting on him. Well, that was before he started glowing like a candlestick, wasn't it? She's right, child. And so are you. It's become clear to us that we can't rightly keep helping other people if we're out of sorts. So we're going to focus on us. Get back our light. All of it. Beatrice said. We'll leave the hurting to the folks still living and breathing, Agatha added. Which reminds me, we've done some hurting ourselves. Afraid we have, Beatrice agreed. Beatrice pulled me into a tight hug. It isn't much, child, but it's the best we can do. I woke up in my bed, with salt in my hair and seaweed down my shirt. My mother shrieked for joy when I did, and another man, a man I didn't recognize, but would later learn to be a doctor, told me I had been asleep for some 14 hours. The police, he explained, found me washed up on the shore. They thought I'd suffered a serious concussion. Perhaps fallen into a coma. I told him that I felt fine, and that I was sorry for causing such a stir, but that right now more than anything I needed a little space to get my head in order. Just 5 minutes, I said. My mother and the doctor voiced their concerns, but ultimately respected my wishes. They left the room. Alone, I went to my window. My house sat at the top of a hill and had a nice view of the town. From my perch, I looked out over 100 sleepy houses. I looked out over a silent schoolyard, a rundown movie theater, and 20 or so boats bobbing at the dock. Then I looked past that. That night, my dream had been longer and more real than any dream I've ever had. It spanned years. Decades. In that dream I played catch, traveled the world, shared pints of beer, and did lots and lots of fishing. More, TCC.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
Rat King, by Max Voynich. Noun. A collection of rats whose tails are intertwined and bound together by one of several possible mechanisms, such as entangling material like hair or sticky substances, like sap or gum. The first time he coughs like that, we're halfway through a game. I stop. Are you sick? I don't want to stop playing either, but the second cough drops him to his knees, and he has to reach his small arm out to steady himself against my leg. I bend down, and pick him up by his armpits, hoisting him until he's back on his own 2 feet, and tug on his hand. Let's go. Kings don't get sick, but little brothers do. I'm sure they're just rumors, just fiction, but I can't help letting parts of them take root in my mind. They say that years and years ago, sometime in the 50s, there was a huge, underground complex under our town, a complex that spread out in all directions like a fungus. Something happened down there, although what this event actually was changes from person to person, and it was abandoned. When we get home my parents rush my brother to hospital, and he stays there for several days whilst they run all kinds of tests. I'm allowed to visit on the 3rd day, and I find my mother sat in the waiting room, holding his twig crown in her hands. At the end of the 3rd day they take my parents into a separate room, and I can only make out their silhouettes through the misted glass. I can see my mother put her head in her hands, and my father puts his arm around her. They do not say anything until we get home, where my father calmly takes every plate out of the drawer and smashes them against the wall. A dozen porcelain explosions, and then he collapses to the floor with huge, animal sobs. I cook dinner and we eat it out of the pan. I make sure that whenever I visit my brother I bring him strawberries, his favorite food, until he grows too weak to eat them, until I have to cut them up with a knife and fork into small, bite-sized pieces which I feed to him. We pretend for a while that he's still the king, that I'm just a knight who's making sure my king is fed and healthy, but it soon becomes too painful. It's a reminder of the years spent outside, of long summers, of the promise that we both might, someday, grow old. Around a month later, he comes home. He is almost skin and bone at this point, but we still make the effort to have a little welcome home party. He looks to me. A boy like that should live forever. My brother was always the favorite, and I knew that. I didn't mind, he was my favorite too. It gets quieter as we get further and further into the tunnels, and I have to make care not to make any sound, holding my breath, taking exaggerated, short steps. There are noises, though. My father holds an old-fashioned lantern in his hand, which casts a small sphere of light across the tunnel, and every now and again he'll freeze and hold it in front of him, as if challenging someone to come out from the dark. The voices are getting louder now, and more manic. There are so many of them. I can hear arguments, confessions, laughter, songs, monologues. Jag never told me never wanted to hear loved him illavet him betalta time was. I wonder if it's the rat speaking, or if it's some great mind leaking, their worries and anxieties and desires spilling out and into our world. The noise starts to hit me like a wall, and I grow my confident, standing up straight, there's no way he can hear me over this. See them, how many times samathingelsa some thingels air herald me out. Hands, arms, faces. All coming from, attached to, this wall, legs and ears and fingers all bursting from this wall like spots or growths, hundreds of mouths moving, hands endlessly grasping at nothing, legs spasming and trying to move along the slick ground, and some shapes are more defined than others. You can see some bodies that are half absorbed by this wall, some that still have the shape of a human, shoulders, bellies, and some that have been completely absorbed, so that all that's left is facial features. Spread out of a mass of skin, and it occurs to me then that these were, people, and the sound and the stench is coming from this thing whatever it is, this thing that laughs and screams and whoops and mutters and spits. Until it dawns me on that it's not just a wall, because somehow, slowly and with great effort, it's moving, swaying and stumbling, and fraction by fraction it starts to make its way towards us, the eyes that litter its surface fixed on the white bundle in my father's arms, the mouth filled with yellowed teeth hollering and wailing, the fingers across the surface contracting and spasming like dying insects. And, frozen in horror, it's all I can do to watch my father take my brother out from the bundle of clothes and hold him out, to the grabbing hands and flailing arms, until they take him and pull him in, and he's too weak to resist, and the voices seem to reach a fever pitch, united for just a second as he joins, and I can hear him scream louder and louder, until I lose his voice amongst the others. That thing, it does not die. It does not age. He will not die down here. I think on my father's words, he will not die down there, and wonder if, perhaps, death might have been better. Backslash 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 backslash. backslash 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 backslash. I make sure put strawberries amongst the food, picking the biggest and juiciest I can find. And if I get close enough to hear the whispers and shrieks and laughter, sometimes I can make out his voice amongst them.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
911 transcripts, The Peekaboo Killer, by the Green Gent 22. Initial 911 call came in at 10:57 p.m. on December 11, 2020. Dispatcher, do you need police or is this a medical emergency? Dispatcher, hello. Dispatcher, and what is your name? Caller, it's Aaron Feller. Dispatcher, what time was this? Aaron Feller, about 5 minutes ago. Dispatcher, okay. And have you heard any other noises since then? Aaron Feller, no. Just the door. But my dog's still growling. Dispatcher, okay. I have an officer en route to you, Aaron. Are the doors and windows locked? Aaron Feller, yes, they're locked. Aaron Feller, okay. Thank you. Call ended. Officer Collier was dispatched to the location. He saw no signs of any persons around the property. He did note that the dog was still anxious and growling at the back door. He advised Ms. Feller to keep her doors locked and call if she should see or hear anything else. 911 call came in at 1:27 a.m. December 12, 2020. Dispatcher, how long ago was this? Aaron Feller, a few minutes ago. They popped up again, just before I called you. But they went back down under the window. I'm in my bedroom now. Dispatcher, did you recognize the person, ma'am? Dispatcher, a mime. Aaron Feller, yes. White makeup on their face and head. Unintelligible, really disturbing. Aaron Feller, okay. Aaron Feller, yes. It's locked. Dispatch stayed on the line with Ms. Feller until officers arrived. Officers arrived and announced themselves 11 minutes later and the call was terminated. Ms. Feller pointed out to the officers where she'd seen the suspect peering through her window. The glass had no visible marks on it other than a smear of white paint. Officers were able to see two impressions in the dirt just underneath the windowsill outside the laundry room. Officers stated the impressions looked as if someone had been standing barefoot, on the tips of their toes. Officers checked the area and the field surrounding the home and found a trail of footprints leading away from the home to the woods behind Ms. Feller's home. When followed, the footprints seemed to be erratic and moving around in a zigzag pattern. The prints stopped abruptly at a large tree, but there were no signs of any persons in the tree. The footprints looked to be made by someone who was barefoot and walking solely on their toes. Officers checked the woods but found nothing of note. Officers spoke with the closest neighbors, a half a mile down the road. The neighbors stated they hadn't heard or seen anything out of the ordinary. Officers reminded Ms. Feller to keep her doors locked and advised her to call back if the person or persons returned. 911 call came in at 3:41 a.m. on December 12, 2020. Caller can be heard breathing rapidly and sounds as if she's moving around the house. Dispatcher, okay Aaron. Aaron Feller, whispering, I heard something. I think they're in the house. Dispatcher, You can stay quiet if you need to. I'm still on the line. Dispatcher, Aaron. Are you alright? Can you tell me what's happening? Dispatcher, I'm here. Dispatcher, they're 4 minutes out, Aaron. They're doing their best to get to you as fast as they can. Just try and remain calm. You're doing great. Dispatcher, Aaron, did you say the person was inside your vents? Can you clarify what you mean? Aaron Feller, caller is speaking quietly like the fucking vent the heat comes out of. I heard something moving in there and I bent down to flip open the vent and saw that white face staring out. Caller sounds to be hyperventilating. Aaron Feller, the standard size. I don't know. 6 inches or so. Not big enough for a fucking person to crawl through. But they did. Aaron Feller, oh my god, why is it taking so long? Dispatcher, just keep the door locked and... Aaron Feller, I think, caller goes quiet. Aaron Feller, whispering, I hear it moving around in the vents. Unintelligible tapping on it. Officers McQuarrie and Pape arrived on scene approximately 56 seconds later. The front door was open prior to their arrival and there were obvious signs of a struggle throughout the home. Officers called out to Ms. Feller but did not get a response. Officer Pape found the dog in the downstairs laundry room staring into the air vent and whimpering. The dog had obvious cuts and scrapes around its snout and paws from attempting to enter the air vent. To date, Ms. Feller is still missing and there is a reward for any information leading to her whereabouts.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
Hi, ma'am, I said as she walked up. It seems like we've had a bit of an accident. The mom's face flushed, clearly a bit embarrassed. Oh, I'm so sorry. This has never happened before, she said. It's really okay. Part of the job, I said, chuckling. Really, it's okay. I've got spare pants in the mall supply closet, and I can wash down real quick in there, too, I told her. Can I at least pay you for the cleaning costs? I quickly glanced down at her hand, and saw no rings. The mall already handles all of that. But, maybe you would let me buy you a drink sometime, I asked, hope in my voice. I thought maybe I could turn this pee situation into something nice, after all. The mom smiled this adorable, bashful smile, some of the flush returning to her cheeks. My name's Molly, by the way, she said. Give me a call when you're finished here, Santa. I was thrilled. At the end of the day, I started helping tear down some of the parts of the North Pole scene that I sit in, when I noticed a crumpled piece of paper. Remembering that Molly's boy had dropped his list when he came up, I absent-mindedly shoved it into my pocket to give to her when we met up again. After finishing packing up and getting changed, I jumped in my car and raced home. I wanted to at least take a shower and get myself cleaned up, to prove to her that I wasn't just some loser in a urine-soaked Santa costume. Hello? I heard Molly ask. Of course, she replied, a smile in her tone. She gave me the address of a favorite pub near her place. I promised to grab a quick shower and then text her when I was on my way. So you can be sure I packed the Santa outfit. Opening it up, I saw a nightmare etched in crayon across the page. Within the childish scratchings, I could make out a red-suited man with a thick white beard and a Santa hat lying strapped to a bed. Kneeling above him, a woman with blonde hair and no clothes was holding a thin gray object in the air. Dark red crayon erupted from the red-suited man's neck. I gasped and took an involuntary step back, almost tripping over the bag full of Santa suit I had set on the floor next to me. When the doors opened, it was at my floor, and I rushed out, bumping into my neighbor, who said something pissy to my back as they headed into the elevator. I unlocked my door, rushed in, and slammed it behind me, throwing the deadbolt. As the shock and adrenaline worked its way through my veins, I fell back against the door, slowly sliding down it until I sat on the floor. Eventually, I broke down and cried, grasping the drawing, the warning the boy had given me, tightly in my hand, just like he had this morning. It was Molly. Part 2. 10.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is HorrorSlop.
By Eddie, my mother calls up to me from downstairs. I take my rightmost headphone off my ear, and I pick up the sound of the general bustle in the downstairs hallway. I can hear my dad and my sister laughing to each other as coats are taken from the rack. Bye. I call back, keeping my eyes fixed on the screen. The game goes on. Are you sure you don't want to come? My mom calls up, it could be fun. Fun family outing. I roll my eyes. I'm good, Mom. Bye. Goodbye. I shout down again. Alright, see you soon. My mom replies. And number X200B. I tap away at the keys. Explosions rattle in my ears as I navigate the environment. Fully engrossed, muscle tensed as I do my best, at last bringing the round to a close. I clap my hands in victory and lean back, the chair squeaking as I do so. I slide off my headphones and take a moment to revel in the victory, listening to the soft patter of the rain against the window. The day is gray and overcast. Wind sighs gently in the trees on the street outside. I glance at the clock. I spin around in my chair, drumming my fingers against the desk. I catch a quick reflection of myself in the screen as it loads. And number X200B. The rain patters. The loading circle becomes stuck mid-turn. I try to shake the mouse, but that too has become frozen. And number X200B. Nothing. And number X200B. It's as I'm going for Ctrl plus Alt plus Delete that I hear a noise from downstairs. Instantly I find myself suppressing a wave of panic. It's fascinating, really, how quickly one's level of alertness can change. All my senses are primed and I become hyper-aware of the sound of my breathing, of the beating of my heart. But as I listen, it comes again. Another cupboard, and then, what sounds like the fridge. And number X200B. And number X200B. I hold my breath, and then, as I hear water start flowing into the sink, I allow myself to relax a little. Killers don't wash their hands before a murder. What would be the point? I'm summoning the courage to call down when I hear a voice call up first. All my tensions are relaxed at once, as the voice is my sister's. Hi Eddie. I've got some food for you down here. And number X200B. There is a pause. And number X200B. Come down and see, she replies, as I hear stuff being moved about on the counter. And number X200B. Alright, gimme a sec. I shout down, heading back into my room to force restart my computer. I take another look at the clock. I press and hold down the power button, then return through my door to the top of the stairs. How come you guys are back so early? I call out. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. There is another silence. I walk the length of the hallway, passing by a little window to the street outside. My parents' car, it would seem, has not returned. The lights are all still switched off, and an unsettling aura seeps up the steps from the shadows beneath. Come on down, Eddie, comes my sister's voice from somewhere unseen. The kitchen, I think. Come see what I have for you. What the hell is this? I think to myself. Eddie, come on man, just pull yourself together. And number X200B. Louise, I try to call back, but my voice fails me. It does not project the way I intended. I clear my throat, though my mouth has dried. The sensation is an uncomfortable one. And number X200B. When did you get back? I manage to call down, where's the car? She does not speak, and her expression shifts to a wide grin. Her teeth appear very white in the darkness. She makes a quick motion with one of her hands. Follow, is the implication, and then she turns, and walks slowly back to the kitchen, out of sight. The hairs on the back of my neck all raise in cold alarm. And number X200B. I do not follow. With my jaw clenched and blood frozen in my veins, I make a hasty retreat to my room, where I close the door shut, perhaps just a little too quickly. The thud of the door going into its frame reverberates around the walls. And number X200B. Less than 1 second later, in that exact same instant, I hear the unmistakable sound of something barreling up the stairs. Knocking carelessly into the banisters with rapid, ascending creaks and clamoring. But none of those things happen. The sounds of the sudden race up the stairs ended as quickly as they began, and with the utmost caution, I tentatively press my ear against the wood. Listening, breathing deep. Straining to hear for any sign or clue as to what the fuck is going on. And the second. And number X200B. And number X200B. Come on Eddie, open the door. I want to show you something. And number X200B. Please, if it's a prank I forgive you, just stop messing with me. And number X200B. And then. And number X200B. Just come downstairs. You need to come downstairs with me. Just follow. Screw this. Next up, I call the police. The tone sounds through the phone, there's a click, then, 911, what's your emergency? Hello. 911 inch comes through the phone. There's an intruder in my house, I whisper at last, as quietly as I can. The rain starts hammering down against the glass, and the wind picks up too. Okay sir, they say after I have told them my location, a car will be with you shortly, please, stay on the line. I do so, keeping as far away from my bedroom door as I can, terrified that at any moment the person with my sister's voice is going to barge through. "Eddie," she shouts, making me jump. I swear that I hear a car drive past outside, and I turn to look through the rain-washed window. And number X200B. And as I do so, my heart nearly stops in my chest. My mom. My dad. And Louise. And number X200B. And number X200B. I never heard my sister leave from behind the doorway, though the officers didn't find anyone, even after a thorough search of the house. My family outside vanished after I briefly turned away. 1 minute they were there, and the next, gone. It's been about a month since this incident. I have a lock on my door, now, and I haven't seen or heard anything quite so terrifying since. But I still get angsty at night, and hell, who wouldn't? And I tell you what else, too. When my family are heading out and they ask if I want to go along. These days, I say yes. /
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same dat crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.